Life isn't perfect, and neither are we.
No, but we know how to face our fears
And have some fun.
and talk about all the messiest things of life.
Like the messiest things.
Get connected to yourself, get connected to others, and get connected to the life right in front of you.
This is The Connected Life with Justin and Abby.
That's me.
That's you.
And you.
Well, that's attractive. Did you just let one rip?
No, I was breathing in. I was centering.
You just let one rip.
I was taking a deep breath in, just kind of
To regulate.
getting myself regulated for this.
Looked like you had a real cathartic release.
Hey, everybody, welcome to The Connected Life.
Was this the intro?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That voice in the background is the reason I survived COVID.
Aww.
2020. Ruth was our roommate. She got locked up in our house with us.
Yes. Lockdown was delightful if you had like a good buddy.
Yeah. Fortunately,
yeah.
I mean, maybe not delightful, but I mean, it was so much better for us.
Yeah.
It felt like a
Mhm.
party.
Yeah, because Ruth was funny.
And fun.
We went through some real experiences together, didn't we, guys? Tell them, Justin, I think you should tell them what you did when I was trying to sell my car.
Okay, fair enough. We'll start this out. So Ruth decided, like, at the end of all the shenanigans that happened here in America, that she was going to head back to the UK.
I was like, Donald Trump, peace out. Bye. I'm going back to Boris Johnson, please.
And then she tried to flee UK after that. No, I'm just kidding. But so she decides she needs to sell her car off to get back to the UK, and she's outside taking pictures of her car, and I feel like this feels like the perfect moment for me to moon her through the window as she's taking pictures of the car, because like, so she's
not detail oriented anyway to catch it.
No, not at all. So she gets these pictures
Highly stressed by the process of selling the car. Very focused on like, oh shit, what's the angle that I take a picture of this engine? I don't know.
And so
She posts the pictures
so she
online.
posts pictures online, and then you can get online, you can see the picture of her car, and in the background, if you look in the corner of a window, there's this like a white butt outline in the window.
When did you tell her?
After she sold the car, because I didn't want her to. I think, yeah, because I didn't want you to take the picture down.
Yeah, maybe like a month or two. I don't know. He was like, no, you should go back and look at those pictures. And I was like, what? There it is, clear as day. White butt cheeks.
One of my other favorite stories from that time was Ruth would do these pub quizzes where she would be in quizzes with other people. It's like, I guess,
like lockdown versions of pub quizzes. So everyone was bored. Everyone was looking for entertainment.
Yeah. So Justin on one of them was like, let me do this one also. But what he didn't tell her is that he just Googled the answer.
So I was she was in the living room. I was in the kitchen, hidden behind the corner. And then I was occasionally like, hey, can I jump in? And I was like, you know what? That sounds like this. And I kept like throwing answers out, but I was Googling every one of them. And she was just like, oh my gosh.
How do you know so much about this? What was the
And you
subject?
guys, it was the 1 week, the only week out of maybe like 12 weeks that I won the pub quiz. And I was like, wow, I know so much more about music than I thought that I did. Like, this is amazing. And my dad and his wife were like, wow, Ruth. You really shone there. And then I find out.
When did you tell her that one?
It was a little wise after.
I think the two things were confessed at the same time.
Yeah.
And I was blown away by both.
Blown away by
Well,
both.
you're welcome. With that
You're
said,
playful and cute.
With that said, Ruth is not only enjoyable and funny and wonderful, but she's also brilliant. She's one of our
Absolutely.
master life consultants that works with us in our life consulting master class. She oversees our second year group.
Yeah.
And she has so much profound insight into the human heart. And she's been with us for probably 8 to 10 years, something like that, maybe.
Oh, I saw it the other day. It's at least 10.
10 years,
At
over
least
10
a
years.
decade. Mm-hmm.
That's
I've been
crazy.
chasing these guys for over 10 years.
Yeah, I actually think
Listen.
probably technically about 11.
Yeah.
Almost 11. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Probably so.
the beautiful thing is that she's someone that we highly trust. We love who she is. And she's over in the UK right now. What are you getting your degree in?
I'm getting my doctorate in clinical psychology.
So she's especially
fancy.
smart. Look at her. She's
Ooh.
She's so fancy.
she's going to be Dr. Ruth.
Yeah.
Sounds kind of creepy when you say that.
That's funny.
Anyways, soon to be Dr. Ruth is here with us today. Go ahead, Nav.
I love that. Yeah, I was having a conversation with her the other day and kind of just processing through some of the things I was working through. And I thought our conversation was really good and important to have for other people to hear. So I was just like, let's record this.
Yeah.
So I'll start.
I'm along for the ride.
Yeah. He's like, whatever you guys got up your sleeves, I'll just make jokes.
He's probably going to be mooning us in the background as we talk. You know, you'll never know though.
You'll never know.
That's the beauty.
Okay. So I thought part of this is I've been really feeling more and more like I need to share a little bit more of my journey around being sick and the process of that and processing through sickness and for me, the different kinds of pain that have come around that and the healing journey that I've been on.
Which makes sense because a lot of you have been along on our journey having conversations about that. But not only are you hearing our story, but you have your own stories. So many people battle with sickness, whether it's the individual that's listening or you're in relationship with an individual that's not listening and you're hearing this and you're like, oh my gosh, like I need to know how to do this. I feel so alone inside of this process. And there's many angles to chronic sickness and what people experience inside of that as a whole, the culture that's all around the people that experience it. And so we just love getting to put a spotlight on this and talk a little bit more about it, and especially entertaining conversations with faith around it, and also just practical conversations of how it affects us internally.
Yeah. I'm going to share, I don't think it's necessarily relatable. We have so many people in our audience of so many different faith backgrounds. And so this is going to be relatable to some people, not relatable at all to others, but the underlying concept, if you stick with us, is learning how to process through pain with people.
Yeah.
And so I think it'll be highly relatable to everyone at the end.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. So I recently had an experience where I went to a church service and I went for worship and then ended up being like, I'll just see what's going to happen afterwards. And they had somebody who was speaking and they were speaking on faith and healing. And I'm on my own personal journey about like trying to figure out my beliefs with God around that. And so I was like, oh, I mean, this feels applicable to my life, so I'll stay. And so I sat there and they were talking and I could feel so much anxiety in my body rising up the whole time she's talking. And the feeling I had is like, I want to run and get out of here. And I think there's a lot of anxiety for me around, just for people who don't know, I've grown up in churches that believed in supernatural healing my whole life while me and my mom were both sick and did not get healed.
And while you've watched people get healing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I've definitely been in the process. And so I could feel while I was sitting in the church so much, just maybe anxiety and panic and like, I don't want to be here. And, but I kind of made this thought in my head, like, but what if there's some nugget that's really good? What if there's something, I can't tell you how many testimonies I've heard or stories from people where it's like, and I didn't want to go, but I did. I mean, I literally had a friend, her heart was she was in heart failure couldn't even like walk upstairs without without having an episode, because I was so hard on her body. And she went, and I watched her for years go to doctor's appointments and struggle with so many normal life things. And then she went to this church service and she didn't want to be there. And she was like grumpy and like, I don't even care. And then she was just like, some guy told a story about like feeling like God helped him get a skateboard. You know, it was like totally irrelevant. And she was like, if you can get him a skateboard, you could get me a new heart. And it was kind of like passive aggressive a little bit. And then she walked out, and then she didn't have an episode the next activity she didn't have an episode. And she's like, that's weird. And then some time on, she's like, I haven't had one episode recently. And she went back to the doctor, and the doctor redid all of her scans. And he's like, I don't know what happened, but your heart looks like brand new, young, perfect heart. And he was like, the scarring, the amount of damage she had was irreversible to her heart from the heart failure. He was like genuinely concerned about how long she could live. And so he was blown away. And anyway, you hear stories like that all the time where it's like, they didn't want to be there, but they stayed anyway. And so I'm feeling all this anxiety inside, but I'm like, whatever, I'm going to stay. Maybe there'll be some good moment. Maybe there'll be some thing. And so I stay the whole time, but I'm definitely, I can tell, I think there's, in PTSD, old familiar things bring up old familiar emotions. So when I was the most sick, I was in church all the time, and I was getting prayer for healing all the time. Mm-hmm. And so being in church in itself can bring up those old feelings for me. Right. And then when they're talking about healing, like I have so many traumatic memories, not even from like the people praying for me being really bad, but just like I was so sick and I was so desperate, and my body remembers that. Right. Connected to being prayed for at church, connected to hearing about healing at church. Like it was when I was really, really sick in the throes of PTSD, I was going to church, but it was my own striving, my own like, I need to have enough faith to try to get healed, or my own deep desires for it were very tormenting. And then you have just the experience all around. Yeah. So you definitely have a quick flashback anytime that you go into those situations. Yes. A flood of all the desperation, the disappointments, the fears, the overwhelming pains. Like the body memory and the emotional memory of it is all really very prevalent when you step into those scenarios. Yeah. I was thinking like, when I think this is the analogy I have, like a little kid who is really excited for their dad, maybe their mom and dad are divorced, and they're so excited for their dad to come pick them up to spend the day. And they get everything ready and they have their backpack and they're sitting on the curb and they wait for like hours and their dad doesn't come. And then the next time they're so excited to go hang out with their dad. And that image is what I have for what being in church was like for me. Every service. Right. It's could something happen now that will change everything for me. So walking in there is just a collective of every time dad didn't show up as you'd been sitting on the curb. It's like sitting down on the curb again and just like. Yes. It's a reminder of how many times I've been disappointed. It's a reminder of how many. And I really think that I thought I'm learning a lot about what I think faith is and what it isn't. And I don't think faith begs. Yeah. That doesn't plead. A new concept that I would say feels very true to me. It's not begging. If you're begging, then it's like a hope and a fantasy. Faith is like, I actually believe this is going to happen. So I don't have to beg. Begging is almost like, I don't believe it'll happen. So I'm like desperate, like, please, even though I don't think it'll happen, please do. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And for me, there was somehow that just became a subconscious belief of like, I want to be healed more than God wants to heal me. Like he's the resistor. I want this thing that will change my life, but he doesn't want me to be healed. Or if he does, he wants me to have to work for it or earn it. And that's all deeply subconscious. I wouldn't have consciously said that maybe, but so all of those feelings are really traumatizing. You're in your worst pain ever, and you're having every church service to me is like, I'm trying to get all my hopes up, and then I'm disappointed. And then I'm trying to get all my hopes up, and then I'm disappointed. And somewhere I had a belief, and this is just bad theology, but somewhere I had a belief like God would love me if I had a really good attitude through it all. Like that would maybe win me points with God, and maybe that win me points towards healing even. Would be like, well, if I just every church service still have a wide open heart, and if I just process through my disappointment and then go right back into believing all of it again, and if I perform well, if I'm good, then God will heal me.
Yeah.
Which just made so much pressure on all of it.
And
So
I think
go ahead.
also the other day, Abs, when we were talking about it, you kind of, I was like processing with you some of this up and down that I'm on in this interview process. I'm like, I'm going to get it. I'm not going to get it. I'm going to get it. I'm not going to get it. I'm going to get it. We're not going to get it. And you were relating it to that. You were like, every day walking into church was like that for me. I have to get my hopes up. Like I go up the roller coaster, and then I have to crash back down at the end when I didn't get healed. And then I have to find the reserves and the resilience to get back on it the next time and let my hopes rise. And that's just an exhausting process to keep going through day to day.
It was horrible. And something I'd like to say is like, I think most people, when we're looking back like I am and looking at all of the pain, it's easy to want to blame something like, the church told me I need to do this, or like people suggest, like most people want to blame for why there's pain.
Right.
And honestly, I'm like, no, I just had a lot of coping mechanisms. I was trying to find some way to have hope. It wasn't a great thing I chose. It ended up causing me a lot of pain, but like, it wasn't because someone's bad that I chose to believe these things. It wasn't because the church is destroying people's lives. Now, are there some dysfunctional things? Absolutely. But in general, a lot of these things have to do with my beliefs from my parents, my beliefs from my childhood. You know, like I could take that thing of like, I just need to be good and go back to my mom wanting to kill herself and be like, I just learned if I can be good, maybe she'll be happy enough to not do that. And now here I am with God. If I just can be good.
If I can find the equation and do it perfectly, I'll get the outcome I want. Yeah.
So anyway, I sat through the service. I made myself do it. And then at the end, the person said like, do something to activate your faith, which I actually believe in this concept. Like conceptually, I'm like, when you have faith, if you do something, it typically helps you engage that faith. So like when I give money away, it helps me engage faith.
Yeah.
Over fear. So I understood the concept. And so I decided to just go to this one part of the room and sit there by myself. But there was, as soon as I sat down, I just started weeping, and feeling so much pain. And I could feel, how, and this surprised me because I never would have said this, but I could feel how humiliated I felt for years, having to do the journey that I was. Like being in a church that believes in supernatural healing and having everyone know that I'm the sick person, and having everyone know and people loved me. Like I had every famous healing person pray for me. Like everybody rallied and fought for me because they wanted me to be healed. But I had never thought about like, through the process, I was just like, push through, get through. I never even thought like, oh, I have feelings about any of this. But in this moment, I could just feel, I felt so humiliated for how many times I felt like hopes up, hopes down in front of the whole room. And then I started having so many flashbacks. There's so many times when people pray for you, and in lots of cultures, they ask you to test it out. And again, I understand why they do that. I'm not trying to villainize, but for me, that was horrific for years. It was like, oh, your neck's in so much pain, move it in a way that normally hurts it to see if the pain's gone. And I'm like, well, wouldn't it, if the pain's gone, I just know and so I remember having prayer over and over and over again where people would be like, well, test it now. Is the pain less now? And the feeling of having to perform, or the feeling of people being so, like, people wanted me to be healed. So let's say I have a migraine and people pray for me and they're like, how's your head? I'm like, it's the same. They're like, okay, we'll pray again. How's your head? It's the same. Okay, we'll pray again. Eventually I would sometimes want to lie to just be out of it.
Right.
Like, because it was like such, and test, what is something your body can't do? And I just all of a sudden felt all of the grief of the amount of things and what I can recognize now is the whole service was kind of like this picture of how I abandoned myself in this process for so long. You know, how many times I went up for prayer that I didn't actually want to go up for, how many times people told me to do things and I didn't actually want to do them. And instead of just saying no and having boundaries, I was like, well, maybe this is the one time. Maybe this is the one thing. Maybe if I do test it out, something will happen. Maybe if you hear all these stories where it's like, I didn't feel anything. And then they told me to test it out. And then all of a sudden I was healed. Like, I've heard enough stories that I ran over my own voice and what I wanted to do for years.
Excuse me, were you going to say something, Ruth?
No.
Oh, I thought you were over there. Which is something that so many of us do so often, is in the middle of our pain and stuff like that. We don't actually listen to ourselves.
Yes.
In what we need or don't need. I know that for years, even myself, the lesson I learned as a young kid is to appease the people around me. There was a demand to appease, to make them happy. And so I spent so much of my life appeasing when I was in the middle of pain and I actually needed a boundary. I needed to be able to have a voice on something. But it was like, no, you should be able to do this. Just do this. This will make them happy, or this will get this thing over with without any conflict. And it's really damaging to ourselves to not be honest with where we're at. It definitely puts a stamp of unworthiness on our own soul.
Well, and when we abandon ourselves, I think that's half of my trauma, like more than what people said or did. Like, the system may be something that's not great, but honestly, I could have set a boundary every single time. I could have said, no, I don't want to test it. No, I don't want you to keep praying for me. Thank you. Can you pray for me once and then not ask me how I'm doing? Like, I could have set a lot of boundaries. I could have had a voice for what I needed and what I wanted. It was my abandonment of me that caused me pain.
Yeah.
Not that the church forces you to abandon yourself. And I think it was really helpful as I was talking through this, the humiliation and the self-abandonment, because even like I thought I abandoned myself staying in that church service. Like, when I felt anxiety and panic, I actually think I should have just left and been like, okay. I actually don't have the resilience yet to do this. I actually do have too many painful memories, and it's okay if I don't want to be here. I think that would have been helpful. Although I would never have gotten to all of this gold that did come from it. So I was crying. I felt humiliated. And I started realizing, I think this journey has affected me more than I have been aware of, which I'm really working on, being open to processing grief and pain. I spent my whole life trying to be unaffectable. I'm fine. I have a great attitude. That doesn't even bother me. It's fine. It doesn't even, like, I'm superhuman. Like, I have so much faith about getting healed all the time. Sure. I'm fine. It's hard, but I'm fine. And I'm starting to like recognize things that really hurt me. So this story came up for me, that goes along with all this. And I thought I would just share it. And then we can open up the conversation a little bit more on humans and dealing with pain. But I was feeling all of the feelings of humiliation. I went and processed with my counselor the disappointment and the ride and the roller coaster. And all of a sudden this memory came up. And so now, if you've been around church or just humans, when people are in suffering, they don't know what to say and they don't know what to do. And we all want to help people out of suffering.
Yeah.
Like nobody wants to watch somebody suffer. So I remember I had this memory come up where this pastor pulled me aside and said, I really think that the reason you're not being healed is because you have a reputation for not wanting kids. And I think that if you wanted kids more, that might be a key to your healing. And I've had everybody tell me all kinds of reasons. People get very superstitious. And this is part of the journey I've gone on for the last 3 years, has been peeling back all the superstitions that I had heard in the church for so long. Because Jesus in the Bible healed a lot of people, and he never told them, you can get healed once you change your reputation. He never said, oh, as soon as you work this thing out in your life, then you can receive healing.
Right.
Like he just healed people. There was no like, let's separate you into groups of people. You need to work on your marriage. And once your marriage is solved, you can be healed. You need to work on your sin issues. Once that's solved, you can be healed. There was zero separation. It was just he just healed them.
Yeah.
There was no superstitions. So I think I felt like in that moment when he said it, I was so confused. I was like, I have a reputation. It was like very shocking. I have a reputation for not wanting kids. I thought that was like the weirdest thing I'd ever heard. No one had asked me if I wanted kids or not. So I had no idea how a reputation had even been started. And I think I asked, like, what do you mean I have a reputation? And he's like, well, it's not like known that you really want kids. And I was like, what? Like, this felt like such a crazy scenario to me. I was like, this is what people are talking about behind my back, that I don't want kids enough. Like, this is bananas. And I'm thinking, I'm so freaking sick. The idea of having a kid is overwhelming to me. What? But inside, I'm like, okay, well, again, because this was my heart posture towards everything. Well, could there be truth to this? Is this a key that will help me with healing? Because I'm trying to, what I try to do is just stay open to any possibility ever. And this is where I say I learned to abandon myself because I was desperate for the outcome of healing. I was willing to listen to anything. So I was like, half of me was like, screw you. This is the dumbest shit I've ever heard. And then the other half of me was like, well, could there be something to this? Is this something I need to check in on? Is there something going on inside of my heart? Is there a thing that I'm like in agreement, And so when all this came up, I, for the first time in my life, actually just cried about what that experience was like and like how sad it felt. It's really shamey. And I think this is part of the pain that came up for me of feeling humiliated. Is like so many people be like, hey, if you learn to love yourself, you'll be healed. Did you know that the root of psoriasis is self-hatred? If you learn to love so much of it ends up feeling like really condemnation. A lot of like, if you were better, you'd be healed. If there's something in your power to do, and if you find that combination lock, then you can get this thing that you really want. So I've spent years trying to do all of the combinations, and that created chaos for me. So anyway, I was sharing this with Ruth and just sharing the pain of like recognizing like that actually really hurt me. And that was actually really painful to have happen. And I'm able to actually feel like, oh, that was sad for me when that happened. And do you want to share your thoughts that you had?
Yeah. Tag. I'll maybe just talk people through like the way the conversation went. And I think you'll track with us.
Yeah.
To kind of like the point of what it is that we're trying to talk about. So often, like, when Abby's sharing these things with me, I'm often internally listening and thinking, how can I relate to this? Like, where can I put this, that this feels like something that I can, because I haven't walked through physical sickness in the same way. Like, but she's my friend. I'm really trying to empathize and understand her experience. So I'm often like, where can I relate this? And like I said a second ago, I'm in the middle of this big interview process, and
for school.
For school.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And part of the interview process is like, you have to kind of reflect on yourself as a therapist, as a psychologist. And so this is very fresh on my mind. Abby's telling me the story about, the pastor who had approached her and been like, hey, I actually think maybe this reputation that you have about not wanting to have kids might be a reason that you're not healed. And it clicked in something inside of me where I was reflecting on myself as a therapist, in that in my day job, I work with a lot of people who are really, really unwell and have been really, really unwell for a very long time, like unable to work, sometimes unable to leave the house, sometimes unable to hold down relationships, actively trying to end their lives sometimes. So we're talking about high levels of pain, high levels of difficulty that have been there for a really long time. And as she was describing this interaction, it reminded me of this space that I often will feel when I sit with people like that, where I begin to feel really overwhelmed by the level of pain. And I begin to feel really overwhelmed by the level of difficulty that's in front of me. And I begin to feel this wave of, you're looking at me to provide you with some sort of solution, or you're looking at me to help you walk through this in some way. And what begins to happen inside of me in those moments is like, oh God, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know. Like, I don't have the answers. I don't have the keys. Maybe I have a few things that might be helpful, but I don't have the answer. I don't have the solution to this big piece of pain that it is that you're experiencing. And what I was really reflecting on in preparation for my interviews was like, when we feel like we're presented with that level of pain, it feels so out of control. It feels so overwhelming. Like, I even know that from moments that I've sat with Abs where she's processed her physical pain. And like, as a friend, my heart is breaking. And I feel so out of control, and I feel so overwhelmed, and I feel like, God, I want to help you, but I don't know how to help you. I feel stuck in this with you. And what to bring it back to the present moment, like what I begin to notice is like, when I feel those feelings with the people that I'm working with, I think we probably go one of two ways. Like, we either lean into judgment to try and provide some control for the the overwhelm and the out of control. And that judgment tends to either go internally, like, I suck as a therapist.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm doing.
Yep.
I'm terrible. I'm ill-equipped. Yep. I can't do this. Or if we're talking faith-based and we're talking about being a pastor, I can connect that a little bit later, but I don't know God well enough. I don't know how to pray these prayers. I don't have enough experience with healing. We turn it really internal and we go, I'm inadequate.
Yeah.
Or the next step that then begins to happen, and I notice this in the therapy room, is I then turn that judgment on the other person. And I'm like,
you must be doing something.
Yeah. Or like, you can't do psychology. You don't have the capacity. You're too stuck. You're too broken. This is too difficult. This is too entrenched. It's been too much time. It's, so what I really began to notice inside of myself is this like negotiation around that overwhelming pain, and that judgment either having to go towards me or towards the other person.
Right.
As a way for me to feel okay with this overwhelming pain that's being presented in front of me.
Right.
So when we were having this conversation about the comment that the pastor had made to you, this is what it reminded me of. And I started having these thoughts like, oh my gosh, yeah, there's so much of a space inside of the church when you're pastoral staff where you are presented, which I was. I don't know if people know this, but I worked in the church for 5 years and pastored whole groups of people through things and was in situations that I felt massively overwhelmed by on a regular basis.
Totally.
But there's so many moments where you're presented with this overwhelming need that you are very ineffectual towards. And you on the other side of it are trying to negotiate how powerless you feel in front of someone else's pain.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's easy to, I think what you're talking about, it is hard to be around people in pain.
Yeah.
It's hard to be around people. I mean, both of you could probably describe how hard it was being around me when I was at my highest point of PTSD and sickness. It was probably miserable for you guys.
I mean, yeah, I mean, it was pretty torturous for me. Like, just flatline truth. Like,
Mellow.
because, you know, I my own self felt like I couldn't do anything about it, you know, and I'm seeing suffering that I want that suffering to be alleviated. And then also someone who's in that level of pain, you just lose them. Yeah, relationally, because they're lost inside of themselves trying to survive it. And so it's one of those things that can feel lonely, overwhelming. The inadequacy that Ruth is talking about triggers inside, like, I can't do anything about this. I feel inadequate to find a solution for this. You know, there like that whole circle of blame that Ruth's talking about, it's going somewhere. If you're not okay with someone else's suffering and okay with the idea that you don't have to fix it.
Yeah. This is something I was thinking about that past. So what we were talking about is the pastor, I know his heart was good towards me. Like, I know he actually genuinely was hoping to find an answer that would unlock something for me. That he wanted to find some kind of way to help me because he saw me in pain. And he was like, I've been thinking about you and what you've been going through. Like, there was a desire for him to help. A
love within him for you.
Yes. And so I think that, but the concept, what Ruth's talking about, learning how to be around people when they're in pain and not try to fix them, is, I think, one of the hardest human things to do. You know, to be with somebody while they're suffering and not push them out of it. Yeah. Not try to go ahead.
And I think that's a big part of it, isn't it? It's like if we go back to that pastor, like, he loves you, he cares about you, he genuinely has positive thoughts towards you. He's trying to negotiate his own uncomfortability with the pain that's being put in front of him. And oftentimes, instead of knowing how to just sit with someone and be with them and provide not aloneness and connection, we look for, what can I fix? Is it me that I need to fix, or is it you that I need to fix?
Right.
And the thought in and of itself, like, there is absolutely nothing wrong with not wanting to just sit passively by. Like, there's nothing wrong with going, like, I want to love someone through my presence. And if we could practically find a solution to this, that would be awesome for them. And so that's cool as well. But oftentimes there's solution-based approaches are rooted more often in our uncomfortability with the suffering than our peace with somebody going through their process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's hard for me.
Yeah. And again, going back to something we were talking about earlier, the blame that a lot of times, in order for us to deal with our suffering on either side of that picture, we go into blame. Even the person that's, you on your receiving end have the potential, Abby, to hear something like that and go into, all right, I'm going to blame you now for further pain that I'm having, and I'm going to vilify you inside of it. But the reality is that type of thinking on either person's end of it isn't making a situation better for anyone whatsoever.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think in the past it would be like, I would feel pain, or I would feel pain if I blamed them. Yeah. Or I would pardon them and not be allowed to feel pain. Those were like the two options. Right. Either I get to feel good, I get to feel sad and they're bad, or they're good and so I should be fine.
right? Whereas the truth is we can hold both in reality of like, this is just a human being that's trying to love the best they know how. And I feel pain from that experience that I exchanged, whether or not it was what they said, it's my own triggers. There's just pain out of it. And
yeah, I think something that I've only been learning in the past few years is that my experience matters and their intentions matter. And so like my experience and this man's intentions were very different.
right.
My experience was that it was very painful to me. It hurt my feelings. I felt confused. I felt talked about in a bad way behind my back. I felt judged and blamed, and like it was up to me to fix myself. But so I can the ability to not villainize him while also being allowed to feel what I felt. Like, I'm like, oh, he's not bad, but I am sad.
Yeah.
Like that was hard. And I didn't even realize it was hard because I didn't even allow myself to let things affect me until you realize, no, that affected me.
Yeah.
That was painful for me. And I think that, it's interesting because as I was having these conversations, there's a pastor who used to be at our church who is deaf in one ear. And like I said, it's a healing church. And there were 1 million altar calls for healing. And he didn't go up most of the time. And he didn't let people pray for him lots of times. Like if he felt like he was supposed to, he would. But he had a really strong sense of self in that area. And so he didn't abandon himself. Like he was like open to healing, believed God is a healer, but also was not desperate and allowing any boundary to happen. And, like we had one of our pastor's wives got cancer and they didn't allow just anyone to go pray for her. And they didn't put her in circumstances all the time where she was at. And so I think what I was able to do is I was able to look and see like, no, you can actually be this nuanced way of living, which is you can hold two truths at once, which is like you can be open to healing and you can have really good boundaries around it. It's similar with people. You can be open to people and still have good boundaries with people. You can keep your heart wide open to people and you can still not let them hurt you over and over and over again. Like both of those things can hold true at the same time.
Totally. And I think even listening to you say that, like on the other side of that, like as the pastor or as someone who's sitting with someone in real pain, it's being able to hold those two truths of, I want you to get out of pain, but I can also sit with you in the pain.
Yeah.
So the major thing that I notice that I lose when I get into that fix it space or I get into that judgmental space is I lose the ability to hear. I can't really hear what they're saying.
Yeah.
I can't hear how the pain's affecting.
On trying to come up with a solution. Yeah.
I'm like, what's the solution? Is it me? Is it you? I'm trying to negotiate the pain the whole time, get us both out of this painful situation the whole time. But really what I need to be able to hold is this truth intention of like, I can want to help you get out of pain, but I can also sit with you in the pain.
What helps you get comfortable with sitting with people in the middle of their pain? What's been your process to get you to that place where you don't have to blame yourself or them?
I think it's a combination of acknowledging that that's what's going on inside of you.
Oh, that's good.
So like a really big thing for me is not necessarily with like abs. Well, sometimes, but like with clients, it's, can I have conversations outside of it where I acknowledge my feelings and experiences of like, I just feel so stuck. I feel so overwhelmed. I feel inadequate. I don't feel good enough. I don't feel like I have the tools that I need. Like, I mean, I actually come to think of it, like I remember sitting with, I have a really good friend who loves healing. She has this miraculous healing story where I knew her and she got powerfully healed and kind of walked out of a wheelchair. And it was this like big faith moment for me that led me to even kind of come to the United States. And oftentimes I would sit with her and I would talk about how painful it felt to watch Abs still not get healed.
Mm.
And like, I feel really hesitant to even pray. I feel really hesitant to even like venture to say that I have hope for this.
Totally.
Because it's so hard to watch someone that you love sit and be in pain and feel inadequate around it. And so there's something very acknowledging and relieving for you as the person on the other side to have a safe space that is like, it feels really hard to sit in that tension. It feels really hard to carry hope and not know that that hope is going to come through.
You're talking about even having the dialogue with the person who is in pain, sharing your own feelings of inadequacies or difficulties that you're bumbling around with.
I mean, not even necessarily the person who's in pain, but just that you're sharing with somebody.
Yeah. Because I can also imagine that a person who is in suffering that we're close to and that we love, sharing that reality of, oh, this is the narrative that's going on inside of myself that I war with, helps them to feel not alone and seen in a unique way of like, oh, I can see what your process is. And you're actually with me inside of this. And you're trying to navigate all these hurdles as you're sitting with me, especially when it's not a blamey thing, but it's just like, oh, here's my vulnerable experience of what I'm trying to walk through to participate with you in this journey.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, it's an ownership of my pain in the experience. Yeah. Like, how can I possibly sit with Abs in her pain if I can't own my own pain about it?
Right.
Yeah.
Because I'm constantly trying to avoid it by judging myself or someone else or her or God or someone. But if I can actually go through the process of owning my own pain around it, like, God, I feel inadequate as a therapist, or God, I feel inadequate as a friend or a Christian or whatever. Like, and I can sit with that with someone and grieve that and feel sad about that. It gives me so much more capacity to sit there with someone else in theirs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really good. I was thinking, the same thing would be true with doctors, right? Like, if we take faith completely out of it and we think through, like, every time I met a new doctor, all of my friends got their hopes really up. And then if it didn't work out, it'd be everybody gets their hopes really down. And how many people are constantly, I think it's valuable to share about doctors and things that work.
Yeah.
But it's the same process for me. If you take faith out of it, which is everybody wants you to be better and everybody has 5 things to do that will magically fix you.
And whether that's in the realm of physical body stuff, like you said, you're talking about doctors or diets or whatever.
Yeah.
Or you flip the script and it's an emotional, painful situation where all of a sudden here's the self-help book or the whatever that's getting handed over to solve it.
And I'm really thankful for those. It's just that process of, again, being like, can I be connected to myself enough to know what I can handle and what I can't?
Right. Because
can I be connected to myself enough to know I actually can't try that new doctor that you are suggesting right now?
Or I can't have a conversation about this diet plan that you think might help me, which also empowers. It's really helpful for everyone in a circumstance like that. Like, if I'm in pain and I have the capacity to not abandon myself, I'm actually teeing up people to have a successful experience with me, because when their anxiety is heightened and they're trying to love me the best they know how, and I can be like, oh, thank you so much for offering that. I actually don't have the capacity to have that conversation.
Yeah.
I've actually built a very safe landing place for their stress to just come down and be like, oh, well, then what do you need ultimately is inside of that. And if I know myself well enough, I can just say, like, I probably just need you to tell me that you love me and that you're with me here in this moment. And maybe I'll visit some of the things that you brought up at a later time.
Yeah. And I mean, like, some of the things that have helped my life the most came from recommendations. So I'm not saying that we should become closed off. I'm saying we have to become aware of what capacity we have. How much resiliency do we have? How much space do we have to be able to hear or to hope or to go on that journey one more time? I mean, if you've been chronically sick, you've seen 1 million doctors and they've taken you on 1 million treatments. And each treatment, you often get worse before you get better. And some of the treatments make you just permanently worse. Like it is a process. The hope up, hope down. If you take faith out of it, that's still the entire process of being chronically sick. How do you hold on to faith and not abandon yourself? Is hard. It's very hard to figure out in this situation.
And I guess maybe what we're kind of saying here is like people on both sides abandon themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the face of extreme pain.
Mm-hmm.
The person in pain abandons themselves, like you're saying, Abs, and like, okay, yeah, one more time, let's go.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't want to. Actually, it feels super abrasive and I can't take another ride of this roller coaster.
Yeah.
And the person on the other side is abandoning themselves and their tolerance of the pain. I can't handle this. I can't do it. What do I need to fix? How do I negotiate this? Like,
yeah, because even the person on that side that you're talking about, like if you're in the therapist's shoes or the friend that's outside of the person, there's this thing inside of us where in our soul says, I don't have the capacity to give anything here. And then we put a demand internally. No, you need to come up with something.
Yeah.
And that's that, like, instead of being like, oh, it's okay that you don't have anything to give. And it's okay if this person feels disappointed that you don't have anything to give. Because a lot of times we're worried about someone's disappointment at the idea that we don't have anything to give in the first place. Yeah. And a lot of times they don't even really want anything except for our presence that's just sitting there. Even if it's unconscious for them, they actually just want the safety of connection. But
it also pushes on our own internal stuff. Like a lot of that for me comes from my codependency with my mom of like, oh no, I'm not okay while she's in pain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like if she's in pain and she's out of control and I can't figure out a way to fix it, I'm not going to be okay.
Yeah. So
if I'm sat, even though Abby's clearly not my mom or the people that I'm in a therapist room are not my mom, it's pushing on that same internal emotional space of like, I can't be around someone who's in pain that I can't fix. I don't feel safe. I feel like a little kid. I'm going into judgment. I'm going into.
Let me say this, and we can go as far as like trying to numb that conversation by pushing through and either trying to solve something or ignoring that it came up at all, or part of healing the abandonment in ourselves is going like, oh, I felt that come up. I need to go revisit that and find out what I need as far as resolution for that, because this is actually my heart saying every time this emotion explodes for me in these situations, my heart is saying, I need something. I need to be taken care of here.
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking like, yes, sometimes I want people to sit with me in my pain. That's very true. Sometimes I'm in pain and I want to blame someone if they can't fix me out of it. Like, I know there's been times that people have come to me as a counselor or a pastor. They want one answer that will fix everything for them. And there's been times I spent my whole first however many years in marriage with Justin being mad that he couldn't fix me, that he didn't have the one thing that could heal me, that could help me regulate, that could help me get through what I was in. Like deep down, I would revert to my child self a lot. And so I would get into that thing of like, I want a parent who can, like, I feel so powerless in sickness. I want a parent who can step in and be bigger than me and show me how to do this. And I know with pastors all the time, and that's part of why I would open myself up to feedback, because I was like, if this would work, I would love that. Could somebody be bigger than me? Again, I was so in my little kid self so much of the time in sickness that I wanted someone to be bigger than me so that they could give me an answer. And it is easy on my side to want to blame people. And so you have this circle where like people are in need and they want to blame the people they think should be able to fix them. People who feel like they should be able to fix people, and they want to blame the people who need to be. Yeah. And it's just, I think I was just, when we were talking, so aware of the common humanity of like, I have definitely said things to people when they were in pain. I was just thinking, there's this post by this girl whose brother committed suicide, and she was talking about how painful the statement is that God won't give you more than you can handle, and how we say those kinds of things to try to comfort people or try to help them in their times of need. Like, we want to encourage them, but it can also just very much discourage them at the same time. And so my ability to see how many times, whether as a pastor or just a friend, I said something that could have made the pain worse for someone helps me. Like, I'm so aware of my need for forgiveness in the ways that I've interacted with people. It helps me want to forgive the people who've done that to me. Now, forgiveness doesn't mean that I don't want to validate my experiences. I've had a lot of really painful experiences. They matter. And when I said they didn't matter, it was abandoning myself. When I said they didn't matter, I wasn't taking care of my own heart. I wasn't parenting myself well. And so just the idea of like, I need to be kind to myself. I need to be kind to others. And we can start to look at every moment that a pastor or a coach or a teacher or a parent said something crappy to you while you were in the middle of a lot of pain. If we can start to empathize with them and recognize they didn't know what to do with that. Mm-hmm. They probably didn't handle it well. And it hurts.
Yeah. And we also have to take into account the reality that they could have actually handled it perfectly. And our triggers, our flashbacks, our emotions interpreted something or perceived something or going about something that it really has to do with me as well. And that's the thing of like, again, where blame isn't involved inside of it. It's just like, I don't know whether or not they did it right or wrong. I don't know if what they had to say was right or wrong. I just know that for me, it pushed a thing of pain that came up. These are the things that I felt. This is what I need to deal with. And while I validate that, I can go on a journey of forgiving this person as well. And I can see that we all are in need for forgiveness. We all say things sometimes that aren't correct or are messy or are judgmental. We're all in the same common human shoes. And to me, that's such a healthy way to approach stuff like this, because then it builds bridges rather than barriers.
Yeah.
It is a breeding ground for healing and repair and restoration on so many different levels when we live a lifestyle like that. And it takes ultimately a lot of humility, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's the really like compassionate piece around that common humanity is like, if we look at it from that perspective, it's two people trying to negotiate pain the best way that they know how.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm trying to negotiate the pain that's internally inside of me. I'm trying to negotiate the pain that's in front of me inside of you. I'm doing the best that I can. I'm going to fail. I'm going to mess it up. I'm going to get judgmental, but I'm ultimately trying my best to move towards you and move towards connection and move towards the best outcome that we can. And I think for me, Abs, that was like the real sort of takeaway from our conversation is like, yeah, I mean, we're both just doing the best that we can to try and move together through this really difficult, painful situation. And I'm going to mess it up. You're going to mess it up. Justin's going to mess it up. I'm going to mess it up in the therapy room. We're going to mess it up on the prayer line.
Yep.
We're just going to mess it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's part of being human, because negotiating pain is difficult and hard and we hate it and we try and avoid it at all costs. And we come up with all these complex rules in our heads of what means avoiding it and what means not avoiding it. But ultimately, can we have the viewpoint that we're all really trying to do our best? We're all really trying to move towards each other.
Which that is the crux to me, of grace. That's what grace is in so many aspects, is that shared understanding of the reality of our humanity, seeing each other as no one's better than anyone else, and that we all are on our journey of messiness, learning, growing, healing, developing. And yeah.
I love the conversation that we're having. I think it's really good. I want to say, for those of you out there, that as I've begun to look at the PTSD around me being sick, I found that a lot of the trauma, more than just my body pain, which was really hard, my beliefs around it is what created so much trauma. Our beliefs around, and maybe we'll do a podcast on that sometime, but my beliefs around healing, my beliefs around sickness, my beliefs around how unloved I felt that I was still sick, those things actually caused great trauma, much more than just the sickness, which gave me a lot of hope. It's given me a lot of hope because I still have a lot of body issues that we're going through all the time. But I'm unhinging from the beliefs that made that so traumatic. And I'm getting more and more regulated and more in my body and comfortable.
You know, I can't help but think when we're talking about this, and we need to wrap it up, but I think about people who have lost loved ones. Mm-hmm. And I don't know why, but that's just like blaring inside of my head right now. And I'm sure that there's plenty of people listening that have lost loved ones. And you've probably had moments where people didn't know what to do with the excruciating level of pain that brought to the surface. Yeah. And there's probably been places inside of yourself where you've held on to grudges or resentments or bitterness towards other people who were actually trying to love really well. And they said stuff that felt either stupid and foolish, or it was good, wise advice. And you just didn't know how to deal with it because of the level of pain that was inside of you, you know. But my whole point in that is like that comes to mind as though there's an invitation for repair there for some people that have lost loved ones. That might be kids, spouses, you know, parents that they lost, and someone stepped in the midst of such an enormous pain, wanting to love well, and it just didn't land for where you were at in the moment or how you were walking through that or whatever, and they just didn't understand. And so there might be an invitation there to really look at repair on that.
Yeah. And to start to see,
and I know,
like,
sorry.
Go ahead, Ruth.
Like,
sorry.
No, just to start to see, like, people might have loved you when they were hurting you. Like, I think that pastor was trying to love me. Yeah. And as long as I was like frustrated with him, I couldn't receive any of the like good intentions he had. Yeah. Yeah.
You say something, Ruth?
I know we're trying to land the plane, but it was just making me think when you were talking as well, like that's what causes the pain on the other side as well, is it's the belief systems. Yeah. Like it's the belief system of, oh, I must not have a strong enough connection with God for this person to get healed, or I must not know what I'm doing, or I must not be a good enough therapist, or I'm not enough as a friend to show up. Like it's the belief systems that we have around why the pain is continuing. Yeah. The often are the most traumatic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's so good.
It's very true. Well, we have one of the things I'm so thankful for is the tools to process through the ups and downs of life, and get out of trauma and survival. It's something I'm very thankful for. We have a school, the Life Consulting Masterclass School. It's a 3-year school. You can do just 1 year if you want, or 2 years or 3. You can choose how many you want to do. But like we said, Ruth is a part of that. And it's a great way to actually learn how your brain and your body process through things, how your beliefs affect you. Yeah. And so if you're interested in that, you can email
us at support@stumvalconsulting.com.
STUM as in Mary, V as in Victory, OLL.
Yep. And you can just say, hey, I want to be on the to know list once everything starts launching for the application process for LCMC.
It's like a part-time school. You can do it part-time, but it will revolutionize your life. And if you're here listening and you're like, I like helping people and I want to learn how to, because you can either do it just to transform your life, or you can do it to become a life consultant. And if you're listening, you have a desire, you like helping people, and you don't want to say the things that will damage them while they're in pain, it's a great place to go on the journey of learning. Do you have any last thoughts about the school, Ruth, before we jump?
It's super fun. I would say one of the most impactful things about it is watching people go on a journey with other like-minded people. People come away with connections that really transform their lives with other students, realizing you're not alone in your pain process, realizing you're not alone in the way that you put things together in your head and negotiate things and handle your emotions. And I think there's something so transformative about going through that process with other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really good.
Well, it's good having you on today, Ruth.
I
really love
like you.
Say something funny, Justin.
Me? I have to say something funny. There's too much
Say
pressure.
something funny.
There's too much pressure.
Your face is so cute.
You know,
though.
I feel like we've been on a little bit of a roller coaster in this podcast as it is. We were high, we were joking, we touched some difficulty, some emotions, some pain. We've come up. I feel like you should hit us off with a joke. Or look like you're relieving yourself again or something. I don't know.
I have nothing. When I'm under pressure, I'm like,
Me too.
I turtle. I'm like, where'd you go?
So true.
I was expected
Where'd
to
you
be
go?
funny.
All right. I won't
anyways,
judge you. It's fine.
Fair enough. Well, hey, Connected Life peeps, rate, review, subscribe, share this. There are people out there that need to hear these types of things, and it's you sharing it which gets it out there. And thanks for participating with us and letting us be part of your lives and your journeys.
Yeah.
Bye now.
Bye.